Alyson Stoner. Welcome to Live from Bed.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you. And these are the comfiest
Are
chairs.
they? Oh, good. I love that. I know. Like, you can move the pillow if you feel uncomfortable at all.
No, I feel perfectly comfortable.
Okay, good. I feel like when I look at you, like I am sent back to my childhood in the most wonderful way.
Aw.
You were everywhere. Does it feel like that?
Well, when I go back and look at my schedule, yes.
Yeah.
But I think in the moment, I had no other map of reality. So I was just going with the flow. And yeah, it's wild to think that I was just 6, 7, 8, 9 years old.
It's so crazy. I mean, you were on, every show pretty much. I guess you did Cheaper by the Dozen, but like, were you allowed to be on Nickelodeon or just Disney Channel?
I was walking this tightrope so gingerly because I was a recurring role on multiple Disney series.
Right.
But since I wasn't a regular, I could still work in different films. And those films somehow also allowed me to work with Missy Elliott and do these other music videos. So I had this multi-prong career path as a child. And yeah, in many ways, I think it was a gift seeing how some of my peers were limited by contracts.
I can't help but say, like, it felt like you were everywhere, from my super short show to like...
It was a mouthful for me too, every weekend shoot.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, you really worked to the bone. Like, you did everything. So my husband and I last night, because I was talking about how I was interviewing you today, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta watch that Missy Elliott video. Was that your first break? Like, was that your first thing you did?
It certainly was not my first job. However, I think it's when a large group of people beheld this young performer, and it became more of a cultural moment that people latched onto.
Right.
So that was different from like the Kinko's and FedEx commercials that I did and the McDonald's commercial where I was dressed up as Elvis in full costume. But yeah, Missy was, I would say, it coincided, well, right after I think I did Cheaper by the Dozen, and then maybe right before I was working on Mike's super short show.
Yeah.
So it sort of cascaded quite quickly, which just microwaved all of these decisions as a family, around, are we going to uproot the family from Ohio to Los Angeles? Can Alyson be in regular school anymore? Is this a career path or just a hobby? So it was like all of these things happening on the inside while the world was just enjoying this incredible music video from Missy Elliott that happened to feature this tiny little white girl.
Little firecracker. It was like unbelievable. Like, you are and were so talented from such a young age. Was this something you asked your parents if you could do, that you wanted to do? Like, how did you get started?
No, I actually attended this convention called IMTA in New York, and we had no idea if it was legitimate, if it was a scam. I later learned, decades later, that it was an entertainment recruitment funnel for young performers with quote-unquote promising talent. And the agents highly recommended that we try auditioning in Los Angeles, but I had no reference point for fame. I had no interest in being in the entertainment industry. I didn't even know what Hollywood was. Yeah. I was a child watching Lizzie McGuire thinking Lizzie is a real human. And so I think moving out to Los Angeles after 9 months of auditioning really radically altered my understanding of the world. And after that, I wrote a book called Semi-Well-Adjusted for a reason.
Yeah, I was saying to you when you walked in, like, this book tour, it has lasted a long time. You've been doing so many interviews and like so much press for the book. Is that triggering for you at all? Like, from when you were a child and worked like that?
What's been interesting is I wasn't sure what was going to come up during this book tour.
Yeah.
Yes, I am revisiting the array of experiences, beautiful and ugly and everything in between. However, I am now a mental health practitioner. I'm trained in certain somatic techniques to help me manage my experience. I've also been exploring these things in therapy for 20 plus years. So I assumed that while some moments would be tender, I would still have a sense of, feeling anchored for the most part. What I was not prepared for is that the nervous system is just so, some things it just stores in such deep, deep, deep places. And so I'll give you a few specific examples. I saw a couple of comments, and I knew to expect this, of course. Largely, people have been really heartfelt and encouraging in their feedback. And of course, then in some of the like salacious news media releases, the clickbait headlines led to highly critical comments. And some of the thoughts I used to have as a child were front and center again. And thankfully, I set myself up for success, hopefully, with my therapist when she said, when this happens, because we know something will come up, allow yourself to see where your remaining healing is and allow yourself to be with it. Don't just try to shoot it down or override it with something positive. Like, see what still sticks.
Yeah.
And so that's one area, of course, just being in the public eye again. That I'm like, okay, here we go. But there are also other things that I'm really celebrating besides selling books, specifically with my health, having been in recovery with different eating and food related behaviors. It's like a monumental milestone that neither food nor exercise were the immediate crutches I leaned on at the highest moment of stress. And that signals to me, wow, some of this healing and recovery has really stuck. So yeah, I'm like getting to revisit everything all over again and methodically analyze and process, all while the world is just like holding my life in their hands.
Yes, because this book is deeply, deeply personal.
So personal.
Right. So I know you talk about your bleeding feet and your hair falling out. Was there an exact moment, or I don't know, like at what point did you think to yourself, like, this industry might kill me?
I wish I had that kind of take on
Yeah.
it to ever assign responsibility to someone beside myself. But when I was 18, 19, 20, I was still deeply internalizing everything as my fault or a result of my choices. And of course, full support of taking personal accountability as a general orientation to life. But also, there were really intense pressures and systemized just the logistics of working in the industry. You know better than anyone else how it can lead to sacrificing key parts of a child's development and also just any human's well-being, sense of stability. So I think when I noticed that my body was collapsing, initially I was still thinking about getting on the hamster wheel and just taking a quick detour to recover so that I could run the race faster than ever when I returned. It was because I was in treatment in a completely different environment where therapists and people who weren't on my payroll were suddenly providing these questions for reflection. And it was like they started pulling these threads. And suddenly it wasn't just, when can I get back on the hamster wheel? It was like, wait a second, this is a hamster wheel. Wait a second, I'm not getting anywhere if I do this. What's going on here? And that kind of deeper exploration, was fundamentally life altering.
Yeah. I know in my healing, and I think in so many people's healing, if you're fortunate to start therapy like in your early 20s, you don't know who to blame, if you should blame yourself, blame your parents, blame the industry. How has your relationship with blame or resentment changed? Like, did you blame your parents or the industry or both?
So you're talking to a recovering goody two-shoes and people pleaser. So actually assigning blame has been something I've really struggled with. I, if anything, didn't even recognize that boundaries had been crossed because I didn't know to set boundaries in the first place. Yeah. So as I'm starting to realize just healthy norms for, seeing where you invest your time and energy and resources and making sure that you can keep your own lights on while you try to support and provide care to other people, all these just, things that I hope all of us are learning about. As that becomes more of a new norm for me, now I'm greeting anger for the first time. And the anger is, I think, just the helpful signal that something feels like it was transgressed or that something needs to change. Obviously, what I choose to do with the anger is, where I get to use my conscious agency to hopefully not cause more hurt or harm, but to say, okay, let's name this, let's address it, whether it means confronting someone and having some kind of reparative conversation if that's available, and or drawing a hard line and saying never again. I'm not going to visit that kind of space or be in that kind of dynamic in the first place. Like, that's where I think my current chapter is. And the writing process really invited me to explore anger. Because I worked with a writing supervisor, and she repeatedly would say, how did you get from A to B when it sounds like, you know, the first draft, second draft, third draft, sounds like you didn't have any qualms about any of this. You just, you know, gritted your teeth, whatever. English, press one. And just pushed your way through. You didn't have any feelings. And of course, first draft, second draft, third draft, and he was like, no, everything was fine. She was like, okay, let's try one more time. And every time she said, let's poke one more time, I was like, oh man, there's a lot here.
Right.
So yeah, doing that while in the public eye, though, is really dicey.
100%. And I feel like you do reach a point in your healing where you realize you may never get that apology. You may never get to have that conversation. And I think so many people think, you know, that healing is this destination where you get that apology, you get that you have that forgiveness. It's tied up in a pretty bow, and so much of it is like left on you to heal alone. You know, so I feel like that's a hard thing too. And for those people who don't know what it's like to be a child star, first of all, can you kind of go through like your weekly schedule, and also what kind of conversations were being had that you look back and horrify you, like about your life and decisions about your life?
So many things that are actually coming up now in my mental health certification training. We were talking about concepts. I don't know if you need to provide a content warning, but feel free to skip ahead, anyone, if you don't want to hear things that are too intense. But we were talking about the concept of grooming and how it happens on set. And I actually had already finished writing the manuscript when I started having more memory surface of these grown crew members who were asking for my phone number when I was 13, 14 years old. And because I saw myself as an adult, and because I was parentified, adultified, however you'd like to describe it, did not notice that this was completely inappropriate to be receiving messages and for people to be wanting to X, Y, and Z. We'll just say hang out. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I could actually write a follow-up to the book already with what's come up. But remind me of that initial part of your question.
Like your schedule weekly.
Oh, yes. So I referenced in the book that I was working about 80 hours a week. And how that might break down is being on set for the legal, let's say, 9.5 hours a day, which would also include some schooling. But then when I get off set, I might be going to a different rehearsal. And some dance rehearsals are 8 to 10 hours long.
Right. And that's then not regulated, right? Like that, you know, you had your legal amount of hours that you could be on set, but that's like...
It's some jobs, you know, if you're working a union job and they're expecting standards and practices to show up and make sure you're following the rules, then maybe they are. But like there are tons of jobs and opportunities where families are just excited to be a part. And then you're like, wait a second, there's no food or water or bathrooms in this place. And my child's been working for 15 hours, you know, whatever. So we all often also have multiple overlapping jobs. So even though one set might only work 9.5 hour days, if I'm on multiple jobs, well, suddenly those hours start stacking. Then you have the unpaid labor, which could be the press junkets, which could be just actually spending money to train, because as young performers, we have this special skills list, and we've got to maintain all of these skill sets just in case the role of the hour calls for it.
Right, so you can sing, you can dance, you can...
Yes. And then we've got auditions, which make up the backbone of the, you know, of our schedule. And then we also have gosh, I mean, I could just keep going. So a lot of these things actually cost money
Right.
as well.
Because you have to have a publicist that you have to pay.
Oh,
You have
right.
to-
Yeah, we didn't get into that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I do remember that when I was maybe 10, 11, 12, I averaged about 15 gigs / commitments and main tasks per day.
Wow.
And I remember getting through, the first 5 and going, okay, we're a third of the way through.
Oh my
And then getting through the second 5. And that could be like, going to a charity event and making sure you're, trying to lend your voice to something that feels very important. And then shifting gears and going out for a super dramatic audition where you're trying to cry on cue. And then
Right.
after, maybe, you're on set for a voiceover gig.
Yeah.
So lots of kind of chameleonic behavior, just constantly switching senses of self. And and so now I'm like, okay, I have enough practice wearing multiple hats. I would love to see what it's like to just have 2 or 3.
Right?
That would be amazing.
So with your schooling, because you were taken out of school at 9 years old, right?
Yes, maybe even earlier than that,
Okay.
actually.
And then you're homeschooled or?
Well, I attended 8 different schools before 8th grade.
Wow.
So some were public, some private, some charter, some homeschooling programs, some on-set programs. So it changed pretty much every year or two.
Yeah. And I find it unbelievable. I saw you in another interview say that you don't even know how much you made per TV show or film that you made.
Oh, no.
To this day, you don't know.
Well, so it's super interesting that you feel shocked because these are things that I haven't even thought to think about.
Right.
So it's giving me something to reflect on because I think there's a balance, right, of like wanting to be able to support a young person pursuing a hobby for
Right.
fun. But then when money's involved, it
Yeah.
should, I think, include some level of transparency, which at the time they probably showed me a number,
Right.
but I just had no concept for what that amounted to.
Of course.
So, I have, generally speaking, no idea how much money I might have actually made
Right.
over the years.
Because, I get like when you're a child, how do you explain money and how much you're making to a child? And is it healthy for them to know? I don't know the answer about that. But when you're 18, or once you finally like get, access to your own money,
Yeah.
then I feel like you should be like, oh, this is what you made from that. This is what you made from this. That's so crazy. So you were on set with so many other kids, and Cheaper by the Dozen, you have 11 siblings who are all child actors. You're working in all these different jobs. Was there a moment that you saw someone else's child actor experience, like through those sets, and said, ooh, maybe there's something not normal about mine?
Oh, interesting. Well, to be honest, I think I was drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So
You're like, I'm more successful maybe? Or like, is that?
No, more so that I wouldn't have noticed that anything was wrong.
Right.
I also was just so busy. You had no chance to slow down and check in on anything. But I think I maybe remember some of the kids on Cheaper, because they weren't working as much, they would just talk about some of their everyday experiences at school or with friends. And I just simply couldn't relate. I just didn't have those reference points. And I longed for them. But at the time, I was also so grateful to be working. That was the coveted opportunity. So I kind of just set whatever wistful
Yeah.
desires aside and focused on, being grateful for the opportunity to work more.
No, totally, because you probably felt jealous of them, whatever normalcy they had in their life, but you're programmed to value busyness and your success. So you're like, oh, wait, I actually have what they want maybe, or what, or what's valued.
Right.
But
I
it's
think I was,
confusing.
I think I was so committed to this commercial version of success that it was all about, maintaining your relative position of being, quote unquote, ahead of the curve, ahead of the game. And I now, of course, if I had a young one who expressed interest in pursuing the industry, besides absolutely not pursuing it, I would focus on just a more holistic, well-rounded version of development where you can, of course, have interests and pursue certain hobbies. And I want to support if you show a knack for something, and simultaneously, it doesn't have to be at the complete expense of your educational pathway, your socialization, the family dynamic, etc.
When you're in that industry and you're a child actor, is adulthood something you fear and don't want to come? Like if you have, like, this is bizarre, but if you have breast buds or something at 11, 12, 13, you're going through puberty, are they taping those down? Like, are they trying to make you younger all the time?
Well, it depends on your body.
Yeah.
It will be equally as weird to answer this question as it is, I'm sure, to ask it. Now, in my case, I was considered a late bloomer, so I was often submitted for characters younger than me, and there was this process of infantilizing myself in the audition room or being infantilized. And then reversely, for some of my peers who developed earlier than others, they were hypersexualized from a young age. And that came with its own really inappropriate experiences, for one, but also confusing experiences because your actual career trajectory starts to be determined by your journey through puberty. And so these elements are not in your control. It's not about your craft. It's not about, how hard you're willing to work. This is what bra size do you wear? You can only play this character and not this one. And so I think, if anything, my sense of age I was so confused because I was an 8-year-old 1 hour, a 10-year-old the next hour. Sometimes they'd even send me on roles that were asking for a 16 to 17-year-old. And we would go, why are we on this audition? I'm not going to get it. But it's always this game of, well, what if this casting director changes their mind? What if this casting director is hiring for 10-year-olds on the next job? What if? So you just say yes. And of course, for a 6-year-old who can't differentiate fantasy from reality, that is just a bizarre experience.
Because you're not going from just character to character and job to job. It's like age to age, and like trying to, interact with adults and talk to adults in a way that's appropriate. And I can imagine age must have been confusing.
So confusing. Because I would read a script where a 14-year-old, for example, was having some kind of sexual experience, but then I would hear maybe my mother read the script and say, oh, we're not going on that audition. And also, then I wouldn't know, well, does every 14-year-old have that experience, or is it just the 14-year-old in this story? And should I be trying to have this experience when I turn 14, or was this supposed to be an example of what not to do? Just so many meta layers.
Completely.
Yeah.
So I want to dive deep into Sarah Baker because I think that's such an interesting role, and I'm such a fan of Cheaper by the Dozen. I just fucking loved that movie so much, 1 and 2. But Sarah Baker was interesting because she was a tomboy for, that's what it was called at the time. She liked sports, more boy things that, for growing up in the 2000s. But it was so interesting because you watch that movie and you kind of cringe because there's a point where Hilary Duff's character calls you Butch, right? And there's
does she?
Yes.
I have to go back and rewatch.
Yeah. So, she says something Butch, like whatever. And so it's like at that time, and I know also like watching TikToks and things, so many people had sexual awakenings from Sarah Baker.
So I have learned.
Yeah. So many people were like, I didn't realize I was gay until I saw Sarah Baker on my screen, or whatever that, their sexuality is. Did that translate to you at all at the time?
No, I wish someone would have given me the memo because I was in my early 20s before I realized I was queer.
Yeah.
And also, of course, these are still kind of stereotypical versions of queer representation. I have to first name that Sarah Baker was written by someone else. There were hair and makeup and wardrobe artists helping bring Sarah's character to life. I was probably bringing some of my own Midwest dirt under the fingernails, tomboyishness to the character, sure. But I absolutely can't take full responsibility
Right, of course.
for everyone's queer awakening.
Yes.
And I look back now and I'm thankful that a character like Sarah was included. It seems that many people didn't find other examples. I never thought twice about it because it was just, I guess, who I was growing up in an athletic family. And you didn't have to be queer to be athletic in Toledo, Ohio. You know,
Right.
those were not tethered together automatically. But it does check out. I am very queer. So
But what I find so interesting about that is in the second movie, maybe because of some responses that you weren't privy to, but maybe the studio was, Sarah Baker has a love interest all of a sudden, Taylor Lautner. And all of a sudden she gets a makeover to make her more feminine, you know? So like,
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, that's so interesting to me.
tell me more because
Because-
I haven't thought about this in years.
Oh, I like to read too far into everything, but I'm just like, oh, I wonder like if that was them initially trying to take a chance on this type of character that wasn't shown that much to children. And then maybe based on their responses, they were like, oh, we need to make her more feminine. We need to make her more of a girl.
I see. Well, I do think, of course, everything that we produce is going to be informed by
Right.
what's in the zeitgeist and the different cultural myths. So I'm not exactly sure what the writers were thinking.
Yeah. You didn't notice that though?
Well, you know, I'm realizing as we're speaking in real time that I wouldn't have thought twice about this pressure to become more feminine because I myself, as a kid, thought, well, whenever I do end up going on a date when I'm older, I guess I do have to wear a dress and makeup even though I don't really want to. And I guess it will have to be with a boy who looks a certain way. And so, you know, I was absolutely drinking the same Kool-Aid. But I wonder if my theory is that, and this might be tooting my own horn a little bit. I think Sarah's character performed really well in the first film, and so they just wanted to give some kind of
Right.
visibility to the character's storyline in the second, and a natural kind of coming of age moment that could tie together the families, the rival families, could be this sort of like forbidden love interest.
So I'm maybe reading too much into it.
Well-
But I'm like, I just wondered when I watched that, I'm like, huh, because I mean, yeah, you're right. I think they could characterize liking sports and playing games as a childhood interest or a child's interest. And then, you know, when you get older, you like makeup and you like boys and you like, you know, that's a natural progression, they would think.
But I think, doesn't Bonnie have some kind of heart to heart with me where she
Yeah.
lets me know that I'm like okay
Yes.
as myself? Or
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this now. I do remember filming that scene with Bonnie, and it's mostly improvised. I don't
Really?
know what ended up being in the final cut, but when we filmed, Bonnie just said, will you play off of me here, and can we just explore what happens organically?
Wow.
So we had a loose script that we could follow, of course, but then they just let the cameras roll, and I think that's why that moment felt so magical, because we really were clued in to each other, and Bonnie is just so... she's such a special human. Have you met her?
No, but I'm so happy to hear that
Yeah.
because she is, you know, the like this maternal person on TV
She
who you look
is.
at and you're like, oh, I'm so glad that she's actually delightful.
Yeah,
Did
she
you have a
is.
favorite adult that you've worked with?
Oh, wow.
Adult at the time, you know.
At
of
the
course.
time, Bonnie would be certainly in the top 3.
Yeah.
The people that flashed through my mind just now were like Outkast and Eminem. I'm
Right.
like, okay, they were really wonderful.
Yeah.
But let me keep scrolling through the memory bank. Missy, of course, is wonderful.
Yeah.
I think someone I admired was Hugh Laurie. I did an episode of House, and I passed by his trailer, and he had this giant stack of books. I believe he had a piano in there. He might have even been playing. And I thought, I just want to be this human when I'm older. So I think I deeply respected what I knew about how he approached the craft. And it also just might have been the character of House,
Right.
you know.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So when we talk about your kiss with, do you kiss Taylor Lautner in She Who Read the Dozen, right?
Did I?
I know
Maybe.
you had on-screen kisses that were
Okay.
but one was your first kiss on screen, right?
Yes.
And
I've
there was
had
no-
many first kisses on screen.
Yeah. But so like how old were you, do you think?
Oh, I mean, probably tween.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no intimacy coordinator there. There's a bunch of adults watching. I asked Dylan Sprouse this same question because I know Selena Gomez had her first kiss with him on screen.
Oh, okay.
I was scared for my first kiss and it was no one else was around.
Yeah.
But like I can't imagine doing it on camera and not having like any
Yeah.
of the other normal tween experiences to back it up.
I remember there's another film called Alice Upside Down, and I had a first kiss, one of my first
Yes.
kisses in that film. And the young boy who played opposite me at the time was shorter, and so he had to stand on an apple box so we could see eye to eye for
Yeah.
the big moment. And there was a whole crew that, lit the shot and just staring as we do our business.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking with the hair and makeup team beforehand, like, do you have any tips? What should I do? And they were trying to say, oh, breath mints
Yeah.
and like, or chew a little bit of gum beforehand.
Right.
And, you'll be okay. And I appreciate the gestures and the effort to try to help us feel comfortable. And of course, it is just a very abnormal
Yeah.
situation when a whole cohort of adults are watching this
Right.
and you have to do multiple takes.
That's what I was wondering. So is there anyone saying, okay, they've done enough takes of this? Like how many takes on average is that kiss moment?
Well, not at the time there weren't any parameters established. There are, as mental health coordinators and intimacy coordinators, you can have creative meetings before scenes now and establish a limit of takes, which helps everyone commit to getting, the best material on that first, second, and third try instead of going, we've got infinite time, which no one ever does anyway. So you usually need to move quickly. But then you can also do things like having a closed set where folks who don't absolutely need to be present can go in, do their job, then step away. And mind you, these aren't just matters of intimacy. It could also be related to violent themes or to, mental health challenges that are being depicted and portrayed, where crew members who have lived experience with this subject matter don't need to be exposed to this in such a compelling and vivid manner.
Yeah.
So a lot of these adjustments, when people hear the term mental health coordination, I think they jump to the conclusion that we're trying to either coddle the artists or we're trying to disrupt the flow of production. And it's more about redesigning the environment with the practices and protocols ahead of time so that we can move through the unique experiences related to the industry.
Right.
Like this industry, it's a super interesting psychological experience. We're making up stories together, and we're visiting really emotional spaces every day. And it needs, like, we have to treat it as such.
Yeah.
So I look forward to more people understanding what mental health coordinators do. Yeah.
I think that's amazing. There's no one better to have that, like to go into this than you. Like you've lived it. If you could change one thing and only one thing about being a child actor, especially from your experience, would it be the finances? Would it be the mental health coordination or intimacy coordination? Would it be the schedule? What reform would you make?
I have a lot of thoughts in terms of legislation, but I'm going to go a little bit more abstract here. I would love for us to measure the child's labor with a new, Yes, I would love for us to use a new metric for how we measure child labor. So on set, we currently are only counting the work hours when you're actually clocked in and out for the job. But what if we also factored in the auditions and the training and the workshops
Yes.
and so that we could see, oh, that those 9.5 hours are actually closer to 15
Yeah.
or 20 or 30. That might help parents, guardians, and
Yeah.
production companies understand where more limits need to be established.
Absolutely. Because that's so much of that is also unpaid,
Most of
right?
it is
Yeah.
unpaid, yeah. Almost all of it is unpaid or costs money, and only the job itself might be paid. And even that, then those checks are commissioned by teams.
Right.
And yeah, you're not really seeing. Also, I don't think people understand that, like, rates for jobs,
Yeah.
some people are doing Super Bowl commercials seen by bajillions of people, earning companies bajillions of dollars, and they're only getting paid a couple $100, and it's a buyout. They don't see residuals. Like, and that's
Right.
not the case for everyone. Some people luck out and really do get that bag, and I celebrate you. And like only 2%, the statistic is that only 2% of actors are actually able to sustain themselves solely from acting alone. Wow. 2.
Because, I mean, how much you worked. And I saw you in another interview. It's like, you should be able to retire by now, theoretically,
would be
right? I know.
amazing.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? But it's like there is this misconception that would frustrate me to no end, to put it lightly. I bet people think because of your exposure that you are so wealthy, that you are so, and I don't know your situation, but I know there's a part in your book where you talk about moving back to Ohio, back in with your parents, and the world thinking you were uber rich based on like
Right.
what was that like emotionally?
Well, so I hesitate to give you the dish that I would share off mic because I think you more than many do understand these dynamics from as an insider, whereas it's really hard to empathize with people who you see through a screen,
Right.
whose lives are painted in such a way where it does just seem like there's a lot of reckless, entitled behavior, narcissism, just pursuing luxurious whatever lifestyles, retreats. And of course, that's someone else's prerogative. I really am just interested in kind of the bare minimum. I love ordinary, simple, day-to-day rhythms. But I think when people jump to that conclusion, as with all of us, when people make comments about our lives without knowing,
Right.
it just leads to a sense of feeling misunderstood.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's then a barrier between us being able to humanize each other.
Right.
So it's just, well, now we've got to do more legwork here on both sides for us to understand where we're actually our starting place.
Right. And I think people also really don't understand residuals and
Right.
the lack thereof sometimes. Are you getting paid from any of your jobs as a child anymore?
A few.
Yeah.
A few still have residuals, which is phenomenal. I mean, it's also with some of my YouTube collaborations, I'll get quarterly reports
Yeah.
of working with a bunch of different YouTube creators. And, it's like a couple $100
Right.
and
People
cool.
think it's
That's-
like-
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They assume it's thousands,
Yeah.
but that, that's gas money for the
Right.
month.
Right.
It's a couple extra groceries.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful
Of course.
for that.
Of course.
But now I am thinking differently about moving forward as an artist. Like, artists are so disempowered in so many ways. I would until things shift there, I think it's wiser often to be the producer and to have a different location in the ecosystem.
I think people are starting to realize that.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, especially because I grew up with a dad behind the scenes.
Right.
It is such a different thing.
Right.
It is an entirely different thing. Do you think that when you see child actors now, is there a significant amount of change, or is it, in some ways it could be harder because there is social media now. They are seeing those comments in real time. They are seeing all of that stuff. It could be more taxing on mental health. Would you rather, this is a weird, hard question maybe, but would you rather have been a child star when you were or now?
Ooh, that's a great and loaded question. I actually feel more concerned for children now, given they don't necessarily have to be interested in performing to have their lives posted online. And they also don't even have to have that separation between home and set. Their homes are now the set.
Yes.
So I feel very protective and in a sense of urgency to help parents and guardians understand what they're doing when they click post. But I do see some changes. I think the social and cultural conversation is shifting. The closer to home it becomes for people with their, smart devices and anyone with a Wi-Fi connection and social media profile,
Crazy.
they're now facing some of the experiences that public figures have had in terms of parasocial relationships with people commenting, or the mental health challenges of having that kind of public persona online and people commenting. So I do see some change. I also have to give some credit to the larger companies who are starting to bring on mental health coordinators, or at least offer like workshops to young talent, so they feel a bit more prepared. So that's where my sense of hope comes from. But, I say this to a lot of folks, like we still have to make sure we're hoping with our feet in the same way that Desmond Tutu said, pray with your feet. Like there still has to be action coupled with your hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So writing this book and publishing this book, did it feel like liberation, or were there parts of it that felt like bearing yourself for consumption again?
Ooh, I appreciate that question because I had to ask myself, why am I writing this? So one, I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing it because I needed my story validated. That I can do in therapy or in community, and that's just going to set me up to feel like I'm swaying in the wind with everyone's opinions again. And two, have I had enough time and distance from these experiences that I can go back and mine them from a variety of angles, as opposed to only seeing that solo story that my younger self embedded at the time. And three, do I need to write this book just as a personal narrative, or can I somehow zoom out and offer readers this systemic analysis where this is about actually fundamentally disrupting this pattern so that it doesn't have to repeat? And once I played with all of those questions, I realized, okay, this can kind of be a culmination of my life's work, not only in entertainment, but also as a practitioner up to this point. And then from here, I do feel the liberation to write any kind of chapter hereafter about whatever field I want to pursue. So I felt like I was helping people catch up to speed. Hopefully, of course, also they get to reflect on their own healing journeys as they read. But then from here on out, like anything is possible. And I think one of the wildest parts, it's starting to happen. And I don't, is it good? Is it bad? I'm not sure. It just is happening. But I held on to those details in the book on a daily basis my entire life. And it's almost as if I did empty them onto the page in a way where there's been a clearing. And I had no idea the density that psychological story and story in my nervous system had been, what the weight of that had been. So I'm really excited about this freedom and white space and kind of like new chapter.
Yeah, because I think there's a point where silence can feel like conformity. And there's probably a part of you that's doing it for little Alyson, you know, that like, that's like, oh, I can finally speak out about this, and how
Yeah.
important for you, who, like I said at the beginning of the interview, was all over our screens, you know, to add to this conversation that's happening right now, right?
Yeah, I feel a both and when you say that, because I think, yes, I do want to show up for young Alyson by letting this story be told in greater detail, and simultaneously, even on this book campaign, I want to be protective of young Alyson, that I'm not just exploiting my younger
Yes.
self, and also that I'm not trying to just continually re-traumatize myself by saying maybe this time it will be different. So I'm holding these things with a lot of care.
Yeah.
And hopefully knowing from here on out, yes, you can see everything that happened in my past, but now I might approach life with different kinds of boundaries.
Yes.
You know, maybe I won't, walking down the street, be this customer service representative 24/7. Maybe I
Yeah.
really will kind of like just stay in my own little lane, and that's okay too.
100%. Well, I'm so happy for you. Thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for having
This
me.
was so nice, and I love the book. I think everyone should buy the book, read the book. It's
Yeah.
truly like, there's so much that even if you are not a child star, did not have that experience, there's so much in there that's so deeply relatable.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's incredible. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, and it's not just about the industry.
No, it is not.
Family dynamics,
Yes,
queerness,
religion, yes.
religion, finances. I mean, there's a lot.
You packed a lot in there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Bye,
Thanks.
guys. Thank you.